Right now on KGW News at 4, fire officials urge caution as the nights get colder after attempts to stay warm indoors sparks multiple fires across the state. Plus, the Prime Minister of Norway claims President Trump's advances on Greenland may be connected to the Nobel Peace Prize. And later, it's Martin Luther King Jr. Day, how the community is showing how to honor the pivotal civil rights figure. Our top story here at 4. Early this morning, Portland Fire says a space heater sparked a fire at a Southwest Portland apartment. And it's these types of fires that officials are warning people about as the weather gets colder. Thanks for joining us here at 4. I'm Stephanie Domerat. We have team coverage for you this afternoon. Our Matt Safino is joining us from the Weather Center with a breakdown of just how cold it can get overnight. First, though, let's check in with Devin Haskins. He's joining us live from Southwest Portland with more on this warning from fire officials. Devin?
Well, Stephanie, fire officials say they see the biggest increase due to fires due to space heaters during the months of December to February. And so far in the last week, Portland Fire and Rescue say they've responded to 3.
Just before 5 o'clock Monday morning, a fire at a Southwest Portland apartment in the second floor bedroom. Investigators say a space heater was to blame.
You got to make sure that when you're using those space heaters that you have the area in front of that space heater completely clear of any combustible material.
Portland Fire says this was not an isolated incident. In just the last week, crews have responded to 3 space heater fires. Just a week ago, a 64-year-old woman died in a home in the Northeast Piedmont neighborhood. Investigators believe an extension cord connected to a space heater caused it. As temperatures drop, people often turn to space heaters. And fire officials say the number of fires go up, particularly between December and February.
We see that increased in the space heater use or the outside warming fires that unfortunately extend to something and we respond.
And it's not just what's happening inside homes. As cold weather sets in, warming fires outside are becoming more common, especially for those living outside. Portland Fire says those fires create a difficult balance because while some may start small, they can also spread quickly. That's why the Bureau recently changed how it handles low-risk warming fires, now looking at each situation case by case, weighing the immediate danger while also trying to connect people with shelter and resources.
If that fire poses a risk to anything, a structure, a vehicle, vegetation, we're going to extinguish that.
That was put into action early Sunday morning in the Lloyd district when a warming fire at a homeless camp outside a Red Robin restaurant spread to the restaurant itself. Fire officials say simply putting a low-risk fire out isn't always the best solution because it can push people into more hidden spaces.
We have found that if we just extinguish these fires, those people end up going to alleys and next to buildings like the Red Robin, inside their tent, and we have injuries and deaths as a result of these fires. So we're really trying to manage a very, very changing landscape.
Fire officials say that if you do need to use a space heater, don't plug it into an extension cord or a power strip. Instead, plug it directly into the wall. If you do leave one alone, make sure you either turn it off and best bet, unplug it. Back to you.
All right, important reminders for people right now. Devin, thank you so much. Let's check in with Chief Meteorologist Matt Safino now in the Weather Center with a look at just how cold our temperatures could get. Hi, Matt.
Hey, Stephanie, thank you so much. You know, the afternoons are brilliant with the clear blue sky that we have. Temperatures in the 40s right now, but look at the wind. It's out of the east at 17. So I think it's really a combination for a lot of people of the clear cold weather and then the wind making it feel even colder. Now, the winds right now very strong over in East County, but they back off as you go away from the gorge, and that trend will continue over the next couple of days. We'll see less wind, but that just means the morning temperatures will get even colder. And it was cold this morning. It dropped to 24 in Vancouver, 26 in Scappoose, 26 Hillsborough. Portland was 32 and Troutdale 37. Warmer only because we had more wind. That mixes the air and keeps you from getting as cold, but it certainly feels as cold or colder because of the wind chill factor. So, you know, either way, it's cold in the morning. We warm up nicely in the afternoons, up around 50 once you get it into the more wind-protected areas. But still, those mornings will continue to be cold because we're in a very stable weather pattern with really not much change on the way. Cold mornings, mild afternoons. East winds will begin to weaken tomorrow, and we'll have some frost in the mornings as well. The other thing happening tonight, there's an excellent chance of the aurora borealis, the northern lights, being visible from much of Oregon. We had a big solar storm that happened the other day. We'll talk more on that later, guys.
Okay, sounds good, Matt. We'll see you then. Thank you. An investigation is now underway after a North Portland church caught fire just before midnight last night. Fire crews responded to North Willamette Boulevard and North Liberty Street, where they found the roof of Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witnesses on fire. Crews were able to quickly contain the fire, and they say there were no injuries. The Clackamas Fire Department is investigating the cause of a fire that left 2 people without a home. Crews were called to the fire in Milwaukee around 2:30 this morning and found flames extending from the back porch into the attic. Clackamas Fire says high winds caused the fire to spread rapidly, but firefighters were able to get the flames out before they jumped to neighboring homes. The fire department says 2 people were evacuated, but thankfully they were not hurt. The cause of this fire is also under investigation. Well, the cold yet clear weather is spurring a warning about water safety. River advocates say despite the sun, the water is very cold, and recent flooding has actually stirred up a lot of debris in the water. Libby Dowsett is live along the Tualatin River at Brown's Ferry Park in Tualatin. Libby, how's the river looking right now?
Well, we did see one big tree along the river downstream, but the water levels are starting to get back to normal. But all across our area, there have been trees in the water, roots coming down the streams, and also even a dumpster in one of the rivers. So river keepers are worried people will see all this sunny weather and decide to pop back on the river without taking proper precautions. Mark Fitzsimmons knows the Tualatin River. He spends summers guiding kayaking groups with the Tualatin River Keepers.
You get a few sunny days in a row and the air temperature gets warm and people get restless.
But even he wouldn't head out on the river during winter without a dry suit and emergency provisions. He says the smooth, sunny surface does not reflect what's underneath after flooding.
It starts to float. It starts to float root wads. It starts to float logs, entire trees. It starts to float piles of firewood.
He says lowered branches can sweep you off your kayak, or snags in the current can funnel you underwater.
If you see this much, of a tree, 2/3, 3/4, or more of that tree can be underwater.
He advises kayakers to carry a pump, travel in numbers, and float with someone experienced. Even larger boat captains have been dodging debris in the Willamette. Portland's Fire and Rescue Harbor Master telling us.
Again, you just can't get out of the way of those things fast enough in a lot of cases, especially if you're looking the other way and it comes up behind you.
And if it's not the debris that gets you, it's the cold water.
You're thrown into the water, you do that. And if your head's not above water, if you don't have a life jacket on, that's what I think probably causes most of the early season deaths that we see.
And another piece of advice he has, cold water gloves, because he says that's what you lose control of first when you fall into frigid water. So you can't grab onto things or even unzip your jacket if you need to swim. So basically, stay out of the water during the winter if you can, because it's cold.
Important
Stephanie?
reminder. Libby, thank you so much for that report. Well, we have an update this afternoon for people who live in the city of Amity. The city's boil water notice has been lifted. The notice was a precautionary measure after multiple parts of the city lost water pressure when demand outpaced supply. The city says samples tested after water pressure had been restored show the city's water is free of bacteria and again safe to drink. Portland police are asking for your help identifying a person wanted in connection with a stabbing in the Pearl. Take a look at the images here of this surveillance camera. Police tell us the stabbing happened back on Saturday, December 20th, just before midnight at the Northwest 13th and Hoyt. A woman survived the stab wounds to her torso. Crime Stoppers is offering a $2,500 reward for information that leads to an arrest. Tensions escalating yet again over President Trump's attempts to make Greenland a U.S. territory. The Prime Minister of Norway said overnight. President Trump said in a text message he no longer feels an obligation to think purely of peace after failing to win the Nobel Peace Prize, which is awarded by an organization in Norway. NBC's Garrett Huck has the latest.
With tensions heating up over the Arctic island of Greenland, President Trump ratcheting up his rhetoric and economic pressure to own the Danish territory, declining to answer when asked by NBC News today if he would use force to take it over. and threatening a 10% tariff on 8 European countries that oppose his fight for the island, that he says is vital for U.S. security. But today, the Norwegian Prime Minister giving another insight in the territorial tussle, releasing a text he says he received from the president that states, quote, "Considering your country decided not to give me the Nobel Peace Prize, I no longer feel an obligation to think purely of peace." Administration officials pushing back.
We are not going to outsource our hemispheric security to anyone else.
European leaders now looking at options to counter Trump's new import tax, including their own tariffs and a so-called trade bazooka, never before used, that allows EU nations to retaliate, though some leaders taking a more measured tone.
I think that this can be resolved and should be resolved through calm discussion.
The EU is America's largest trading bloc.
I think you will expect to see a number of senators join in an anti-tariff resolution filed right when we get back.
The escalation in tensions is really troubling, and we are on the verge of a crippling trade war with Europe.
Trump has made no secret he wants to own Greenland.
We need Greenland for national security very badly.
To counter what he calls a growing threat from Russia and China. But in a statement, the Chinese government says the U.S. should stop using a China threat for selfish gains. President Trump will head to the Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland this week, where Treasury Secretary Bessent says the president will tell officials that this is what American leadership in the world looks like. Garrett Haake, NBC News, the White House.
And back in our area, local lawmakers hosted town halls to hear from the public over the weekend on the escalating tensions surrounding the future of Greenland. Sunrise reporter Thomas Schultz has the reaction.
At a town hall in Clackamas County, Oregon Senator Ron Wyden slammed President Trump's plans to increase tariffs on European countries that are against his plan to annex Greenland. We also spoke to a man named Brady Jensen, the president of Nordic Northwest. That's a nonprofit focused on preserving Nordic culture in the Pacific Northwest. Jensen says many in Denmark are confused by President Trump's plans because the United States already has military access to Greenland.
The United States already has treaty rights that allow it to expand its military presence in Greenland. We can accomplish what the president says are his objectives without straining the relationship.
Though on Truth Social, President Trump posted in part Saturday, quote, "China and Russia want Greenland, and there's not a thing Denmark can do about it. Only the United States of America under President Donald J. Trump can play in this game," end quote. On Meet the Press, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent backed the president, saying it's in America's best interest to take full control of Greenland.
I believe that the Europeans will understand that the best outcome is for the U.S. to maintain or receive control of Greenland.
Of course, that's a stance that Denmark and many European countries continue to strongly disagree with. In downtown Portland, Thomas Schultz, KGW News.
Coming up on KGW News at 4, individuals and organizations spread out across the metro area today to honor the civil rights icon Martin Luther King Jr. Plus, dangerous weather grips much of the eastern U.S. A look at the conditions Americans from Florida to Michigan are facing. First, let's check in with Matt.
Yeah, not here. It is clear and beautiful. Look at the sky cam from Salem. Temperature there was 50. It's dropped on down to 49. And as I mentioned earlier, there's an excellent chance that the northern lights will be visible around the northwest tonight, including a good part of the state of Oregon. We'll talk more about that.
The KGW Plus TV app, streaming 24/7. Local news from the team you trust on your time. Track how the weather will impact your day.
Certainly becoming increasingly hazardous.
Extended, continuous coverage of breaking news live from the scene.
That snowpack is still heavy.
Go deeper with in-depth interviews and exclusive reporting. All the local news you need, live or on demand. KGW Plus. Download on your TV and watch for free.
We have now issued a weather impact alert.
We could expect conditions in some parts of our area to change drastically pretty soon, right?
And very quickly, yeah.
This is significant rainfall coming our way.
You'll definitely want to be extra cautious.
Certainly becoming increasingly hazardous.
We've got the potential for some tree limbs or even trees or power lines to come down.
Of course, when you hear thunder, it's always best to take cover.
On Weather Impact Alert Days, stream extended coverage on KGW+.
Across the country today, events were held to honor the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. In Portland, hundreds volunteered to help clean up local parks, while others participated in peace walks. One of those peace walks was held in Salem this afternoon. Our Joe Ranieri talked with organizers about why this day is so important. Joe?
Hey there, Stephanie. A good crowd started at McKay High School earlier this afternoon. Now, this was the second annual Peace March that was held in Salem. Now, they walked a stretch from nearly 2 miles from the high school to a local church from just a couple of hours ago. Now, events were held to celebrate the life and the legacy of the late Martin Luther King. Now in Portland, there were other marches along Rosa Parks Way. Today is all about celebrating what he stood for, but it's also a day of service too. In Northeast Portland, volunteers with Solve came out to help clean up local parks.
I think it's great to just have the opportunity to give back and show that we care about the communities that we're in, to give back in any way, shape, or form. And this is one way that we can, on a broad scale, show the community that we're here and we're here to stay.
The Portland Sunshine Division held a huge event where they put together 1,000 food boxes that was delivered to families across the area. Now that event earlier today helped close to 3,400 families. This is the 6th year that the Portland Sunshine Division has been participating in this event. Stephanie, back to you.
All right, Joe. Yeah, big day and nice weather for people to get out there today. Thanks so much. Well, more than 70 new trees are taking root in urban neighborhoods surrounding the MLK corridor of Northeast Portland. Friends of Trees teamed up with Portland Parks and Recreation's urban forestry team to teach student volunteers how to properly plant trees. They say this part of Northeast is one of Portland's most heat vulnerable areas, and they want to plant as many trees as homeowners will allow.
It helps moderate the climate. It makes things cooler for people. It is obviously oxygen. We all love oxygen. And it helps clean the water that comes in from runoff from streets and houses.
Planning event, which is held on the Saturday before Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Well, turning now to a dangerous Arctic blast that is battering the central and eastern U.S. This is the scene in Michigan, where snow and slick roads led to this roughly 100-car pileup. Such a mess there. Farther south, even in the Sunshine State, we're seeing snow, with Florida's Panhandle seeing flakes hitting the ground. NBC's Aaron McLaughlin has more on how this dangerous weather is playing out across the country.
Overnight, a major blast of winter weather slamming the eastern seaboard, impacting millions from the Gulf Coast to the Northeast. The snow and freezing temperatures creating travel chaos this holiday weekend, with hundreds of cancellations this weekend nationwide and over 11,000 delays. In the Northeast, planes taking off in near whiteout conditions, and a ground stop at New York's LaGuardia Airport Sunday night delaying hundreds of flights. The roads treacherous, with multiple pileups over the weekend. Some parts of the Northeast buried in up to nearly 8 inches of snow, and the winter weather not stopping there. Wind chill temperatures plummeting to a life-threatening 35 below zero in parts of the Midwest. Shockingly low temps extending as far south as Florida, sending hundreds of manatees swimming to warmer water and leaving the local iguana population cold stunned, and the Sunshine State turning snowy.
As a Florida man, it's wild. It's wild. I'm still not used to it.
As Americans look ahead to a chilly start of the week.
All right, very different situation than what we have here.
Yeah, we don't have iguanas falling out of the
No,
trees.
that's always hard to watch.
It really
they're
is.
Usually
Poor
okay.
guys.
They're just
stunned. They're frozen, basically.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
cold-blooded critters. So yeah, they can't handle that. Let's take you outside. We've had some really delightful weather through the weekend.
It's been nice.
Did you have a good
The wind's
weekend?
been a little rough, but it's been
Yeah.
nice. Yeah, I went to the coast actually, and I got lucky because it wasn't as windy out there.
Oh, good. Nice. I was up here in the Cascades, and while the snowpack, could definitely use a boost, Boy, the weather was great. I mean, it was in the 50s skiing. It felt like spring skiing. It was amazing. It is 46 degrees at Timberline right now at 6,000 feet in the Mount Hood National Forest, and the winds have backed off there. You can see some low clouds in the valley here down around Government Camp. Now, the thing that I'm excited about tonight is the Northern Lights. There's a really good chance. There is a major solar flare pointed towards Earth, a long duration solar flare, which means it pumped even more energy towards our planet. And one thing we watch is something called the K index. I won't go into the details of that, but it's a measure as to how much extra solar radiation is coming our way from these solar flares and solar and geomagnetic storms. And when it gets up to 8, Oregon has a really good chance of seeing the Northern Lights, like we've had a couple times in the last couple of years. And it is forecast to climb above 8 by later on tonight. So look to the north, get away from city lights. That's pretty key. Like if you're in the middle of the city and you're like, oh, I'm going to go out in my backyard and see the Northern Lights, probably not going to happen. You need to get away from the city lights. But we got a really good chance. And we had a new moon yesterday, which means there's basically still no moon tonight. That's less light for the Northern Lights to compete with. So give a look if you have a chance. Even at the coast, could be great. This is Seaside right now. There's a surfer out there. Or is that a surfer or is that a paddleboard? He's moving really quick. It might be one of those e-foils or something like that. Nonetheless, he's having fun in the water along with a few other folks. 57 degrees out at Seaside right now. Wow, really warm at the coast. That's what Stephanie was doing this weekend, enjoying that warm, wind-free weather. Now, the Columbia Basin socked in with low clouds here. This pattern is just not really going to change, at least not very quickly. Here are the winds. They really back off once you get away from the gorge, but we had a gust of 74 miles an hour at Corbett today and gusts as high as 35 in the West Hill. So it has been windy, but again, it's mainly in and near the gorge and in the Portland area. It is keeping our air quality good. We have air quality air stagnation advisories for much of the rest of the state. Our high was 47. McMinnville hit 52. Scappoose was 51. 60 down in Brookings and 64 in North Bend and Tillamook. Looks like those will be the hot spots today. You can see the impact the low clouds having in eastern Oregon. The high of only 24 in Joseph, only 30 at Pendleton, and the Hood River Valley seeing the same thing. Trees are all frosted down in the fog and low clouds. It's much colder there than it is up on the mountain itself, which is quite remarkable, but that's how inversions go. So our area of high pressure is beginning to lean over a little bit towards the northwest. By the way, this is the other side of the pattern that's allowing all that Arctic air to drop down into the eastern two-thirds of the country and cause all those issues we were talking about. As far as we're concerned, we'll see the east winds weekend. Chances of precipitation, though, pretty much zero through the weekend. I mean, there's a slight chance of maybe something coming through on Sunday, but I think it's going to be next week before we get any meaningful precipitation, valley rain, or mountain snow. And there's really no chance of any valley snow in spite of what you might see on your app. 43 degrees right now in Portland, freezing level 10,600 feet. Morning frost in the wind-free areas, then sunny and about 51 tomorrow. Morning lows all down around or below freezing, so the mornings are chilly, but the afternoons are pleasant and still 7 days in a row with no precipitation.
Okay, hoping it's coming soon though, right?
I do too.
Okay, Matt, thank you. Well, we are just 17 days away from kicking off the Winter Olympic Games, and Team USA is preparing to compete on the world stage. And with it comes both mental and physical pressure. That's something Pacific Northwest native Corinne Stoddard knows well. The speed skater shares how the sisterhood among her U.S. teammates helps her handle that burden.
Right now, my eyes are on Corinne Stoddard. She needs to be fighting hard for one of these third fastest times.
Right.
I had a really hard time with my mental health, and that really opened the door for me in terms of understanding what other people have gone through.
And she's down.
Corinne Stoddard not able to get out of this first heat.
Once I went through it, it changed my view on it a lot. I'm Corinne Stoddard. I do short track speed skating, and my hometown is Seattle, Washington. We have some really good teammates on our team.
Two skaters who are as good as sisters, Kristen Santos-Griswold and Corinne Stoddard.
When one of us is having a really hard time, mentally or physically on the ice, we all lean on each other.
Stoddard had some late season struggles. She's come back fast as ever here to start off the season in Montreal.
A lot of us just try to encourage that person and try to help them out as best we can.
started from bronze to gold. USA 1 and 2.
We work really hard as a team every day, and I think that brings us closer together. Knowing how each teammate works and what works best for them in terms of what you say to them and how their emotions will act is really important, I think.
And still ahead on the news at 4, a man who spent more than a decade in prison and at one point faced the death penalty for a crime he didn't commit. Now a free man. He pushes lawmakers for legislation to avoid what he went through for others. Plus, the Pentagon is ordering 1,500 troops to be at the ready as the Trump administration threatens a deployment in Minneapolis. We'll be right back.
The KGW Plus TV app, streaming 24/7. Local news from the team you trust on your time. Track how the weather will impact your day.
Certainly becoming increasingly hazardous.
Extended, continuous coverage of breaking news live from the scene.
That snowpack is still heavy.
Go deeper with in-depth interviews and exclusive reporting. All the local news you need, live or on demand. KGW Plus. Download on your TV and watch for free. The KGW Plus TV app, streaming 24/7. Local news from the team you trust. Track how the weather will impact your day. Breaking news live from the scene. All the local news you need. KGW Plus. Download on your TV and watch for free. On Weather Impact Alert Days, stay informed, prepared, and connected with KGW and KGW Plus. Coverage that alerts you to what's coming and how it will impact you. Watch extended weather coverage on KGW Plus.
A man wrongfully convicted of murder in Oregon has now been compensated by the state. Scott Cannon spent 11 years in prison. After getting out, he spent even longer trying to get justice for his wrongful conviction. Jake Holter has the story.
How do you get your life back? How do you get your time?
In 1998, Scott Cannon was arrested for the murder of 3 people, a crime he did not commit. He was convicted in 2000 and sentenced to 3 life sentences after at one point facing the death penalty.
That's absolutely nerve-wracking, having people decide your fate and knowing that there was so many different instances throughout the trial itself where the prosecution was taking liberties with the facts.
One example is the prosecution's use of, quote, comparative bullet-lead analysis, a forensic method the FBI stopped using in 2005 and has widely been declared unreliable. But during the trial, Cannon says the prosecution told the jury that the analysis meant there was a 1 in 64 million chance they had the wrong guy.
It was not disclosed prior to my trial that they had consulted with State Police Crime Lab and were told that bullet lead analysis was a buyer beware testing and that they wouldn't do it.
After getting in touch with an expert in the forensics field while incarcerated, that got the ball rolling to Cannon's eventual exoneration in 2009. Afterwards, the fight began for Cannon's justice.
Oregon had no law on the books whatsoever that even allowed a person to claim compensation for wrongful conviction.
After lobbying for years, the legislature passed the Oregon Justice for Exonerees Act in 2022. And this week, Cannon was compensated and issued a certificate of innocence.
Being the second person in Oregon to get a certificate of innocence, I'm pretty sure more people in Oregon won the lottery.
That certificate, he hopes, will help him rebuild his life. Going forward, Cannon says he will continue to lobby for more legislation to help people who have been in his position.
There's more to be done, and I have hope.
Jake Holter, KGW News.
Thanks so much for joining us here at 4:30. I'm Stephanie Domerat. We begin this half hour with the latest in Minnesota as active duty troops are under prepare to deploy orders and ongoing protests against ICE in Minneapolis. President Trump has threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act to deal with those protests. NBC's Maggie Vespa is in Minneapolis with the latest.
As clashes over ongoing immigration raids mount here in Minneapolis, it appears the Trump administration may be preparing to take historic measures, with two defense officials telling NBC News the Pentagon has placed 2 battalions of the 11th Airborne Division, that's some 1,500 active duty troops, on what they call prepare to deploy orders. This after President Trump publicly weighed invoking the Insurrection Act here in Minneapolis, and those officials adding they have no further indication beyond those comments that the president will do so, calling the orders, quote, prudent planning. Now, this follows violent clashes over the weekend, including dueling rallies here on Saturday with conservative activists leading a pro-ICE demonstration. And yesterday, protesters interrupting a church service where they say an ICE employee serves as a pastor. The Justice Department now says it's investigating that incident. Meanwhile, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey under investigation by the Justice Department, as is Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, both for, investigators say, potentially impeding immigration enforcement here. That's according to a senior law enforcement official and a person familiar with the matter. Frey saying this is stuff that happens in other countries, shouldn't happen in America. Governor Walz posting, quote, the only person not being investigated for the shooting of Renee Good is the federal agent who shot her. And then finally, we should point out all of this unrest happening against the backdrop of plummeting, dangerously cold temperatures here in Minneapolis. We were outside earlier when a wind chill of -23. It was so cold our gear stopped working, so we moved inside for the remainder of our reports today. And despite all that, again, these protests, these clashes continuing here on the ground. I'll send it back to you.
And that was Maggie Vespa reporting. Now, at some point today, the Justice Department is expected to respond to a lawsuit brought on by the cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul. The cities filed the lawsuit in an attempt to curb what they call unlawful immigration enforcement tactics in the region. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem has repeatedly accused Minnesota leaders of protecting criminals in their opposition to ICE. Meanwhile, closer to home, local groups held protests against the government's immigration crackdown here in the Portland area over the weekend. Protesters gathered at downtown Terry Shrunk Plaza. They say to stand against the Trump administration and call for ICE to get out of the city. One organizer says after the deadly ICE shooting in Minneapolis and the Border Patrol shooting in Portland, the urgency for city leaders to act is greater than ever.
People are pissed. People are upset. And this has led to a lot of people jobless, a lot of people being deported, a lot of people scared for their life to go outside. And it's not living up to what the American dream is.
Meantime, the woman shot by a Border Patrol agent in Southeast Portland earlier this month made her first court appearance Friday afternoon for immigration charges. Prosecutors say she illegally entered the U.S. in 2023. She's being held on a criminal complaint filed in Texas. And now to a look at your 4:30 headlines. At least 39 people were killed and dozens more injured in a train crash in Spain last night. Local officials there say this happened when the tail end of a high-speed train jumped the tracks and was hit by another train going the opposite direction. Roughly 300 passengers were on the first train, 200 on the second. So far, it's unclear what caused this. It happened on a flat stretch of track that had been renovated in May, and the train that jumped its tracks was less than 4 years old. Officials promised a full investigation. President Donald Trump announced the creation of a board of peace to oversee the reconstruction of Gaza. There are reports that anyone who wants a permanent seat on the board must pay $1 billion. That money would be used to rebuild Gaza. Board members who do not make that payment could serve a 3-year term. The board currently has no representation from the Palestinian Authority. On Wednesday, the Supreme Court is expected to hear oral arguments in the case of President Trump's attempt to fire Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. A source close to the matter tells CNN Fed Chair Jerome Powell plans to attend the hearing. Trump tried to fire Cook last summer after allegations she committed mortgage fraud. Cook has denied any wrongdoing and warned that a ruling in favor of Trump could have negative consequences for financial markets. The justices last year temporarily allowed Cook to stay on the job while they considered this case. Iconic fashion designer Valentino Garavani has died. Many from the world of high fashion know him, of course, only by his first name. He founded his own line of clothing in 1959 and became known for designing red dresses. He dressed some of the most glamorous women in the world, princesses, first ladies, A-list actresses. Valentino was 93 years old. And those are your 4:30 headlines. Well, make sure to gather those W-2s or 1099s because we have just 1 week before the official start to tax season. But this year, the rules have shifted in some big ways, and what you owe or get back could look very different. Brian Abel breaks down the changes and what they could mean for your bottom line.
You remember the so-called One Big Beautiful Bill that passed back in July? Well, with it came new tax provisions and a whole set of tax changes as well. So let's try and navigate some of the biggest ones in what's already a complex U.S. tax code.
Filing your taxes.
It's very confusing.
And even more so this tax season. Why? The passage of President Trump's signature law, the so-called One Big Beautiful Bill, that's ushered in a handful of tax changes. Let's highlight the big ones, starting with higher standardized deductions. For singles, it was $15,000.
For 2025, it goes up to $15,750.
SALT stands for state and local taxes. And it was a key sticking point during negotiations of the bill. There's a cap on how much in SALT one can pay depending on adjusted gross income.
The old law was a $10,000 cap. Now you can get anywhere from $10,000 to $40,000 in 2025.
But John Karp from accounting firm Whitley Penn says, don't forget how the standardized deductions factor in.
Remember, you got to first crest that hurdle of the standard deduction of $31,500 if you're married filing joint. So if you never can get to your itemized deductions, the state and local taxes don't matter anyway because it's an itemized deduction.
Another change is for all of the servers out there.
That's no tax on tips.
With some caveats.
No tax on tips is capped at $25,000 per return. So if you have a married filing joint couple, they only get $25,000. It's not $25,000 per person.
And for qualifying children, the child tax credit is $200 more this year. There's also the so-called Trump accounts for any child born after 2024. The easiest way to get that $1,000 account is to file a 4547 form with your taxes this year. The IRS will be accepting filing starting January 26. In Washington, Brian Abel reporting.
And something else to consider as tax season draws closer, the Department of Education is delaying plans to seize tax returns from student loan borrowers in default. The department was also set to begin garnishing wages and seizing federal benefits from those with student loan debt. Collections were set to begin this month. In a statement, department officials said they are temporarily pausing those plans to give them time to implement reforms to the student loan system. So far, it's not clear how long that delay will last. Well, what would you do with a work week that's 1 day shorter? Coming up, workers in Washington County, or one in Washington County operating under a 32-hour work week, are sharing their experience. And later, could the 12 recreate the Rumble? Seismologists in Seattle compare the energy from Saturday's game against the legendary 2011 Beastquake. We'll be right back.
The KGW Plus TV app, streaming 24/7. Local news from the team you trust on your time. Track how the weather will impact your day.
Certainly becoming increasingly hazardous.
Extended, continuous coverage of breaking news, live from the scene.
That snowpack is still heavy.
Go deeper with in-depth interviews and exclusive reporting. All the local news you need, live or on demand. KGW Plus. Download on your TV and watch for free. On weather impact alert days, stay informed, prepared, and connected with KGW and KGW Plus. Coverage that alerts you to what's coming and how it will impact you. Watch extended weather coverage on KGW Plus. The KGW Plus TV app, streaming 24/7. Local news from the team you trust. Track how the weather will impact your day. Breaking news live from the scene. All the local news you need. KGW Plus. Download on your TV and watch for free.
Well, our next story takes us to a Washington community just north of Seattle that's making a major switch to its employees' schedules, one expected to yield pretty positive results. After 2 years of study, San Juan County officially adopted the 32-hour work week for most of its workers this year. Eric Wilkinson has more.
In a world that seems to keep accelerating, some places are simply trying to slow down. San Juan County, Washington, home of the San Juan Islands, where island time is becoming the law of the land.
Public Works, this is Kelsey speaking.
When Kelsey Venegas shows up for work each Monday morning, she feels excited.
Usually energized on a Monday morning to kind of handle what it's going to throw at us.
Kelsey is part of a workplace revolution where less is more.
Is he waiting on the scene?
She works for San Juan County, the first county in the state to implement a 32-hour work week. Kelsey works 4 8-hour shifts with Fridays off. The county tinkered with the concept for 2 full years. Most county employees getting the same pay for the same amount of work with the same level of productivity expected, but working just 4 days instead of 5. This year, it became official policy. It's allowed Kelsey, a married mother of 2, much more freedom.
It eased the parenting guilt that I can still be present, at least on Fridays for school events. I currently volunteer at the PTO for our school every Friday, and I'm just more present in the kids' lives.
San Juan County was among the first of the counties, cities, even countries, all clocking in with positive reviews about the 32-hour work week. The question becoming, what is your time worth? The county found 83% of San Juan County workers experienced an improvement in work-life balance, with 18% less sick time and a 216% increase in people applying for work. Perhaps most significant, $2 million in savings for taxpayers over 2 years. Nationwide, studies found a 15% increase in revenue. 71% of workers experienced less burnout, with 0 loss in productivity.
The 32-hour work week is here to stay in San Juan County.
Sure, it works in a county with only about 19,000 people, but what about a place like King County with more than 2 million?
We believe so, because we can do it here, where there's not as much redundancy and duplication of efforts across employees. Larger jurisdictions may be even more able to implement this because they have efficiency of scale.
32-hour work weeks are gaining in popularity across the U.S., with about 5% offering the benefit, but 15% either testing or considering it, almost double just a few years ago.
They're having some issues with road erosion.
As for Kelsey, she hopes island time will soon be universal.
I wish this opportunity existed for other people.
In Friday Harbor, Eric Wilkinson, King 5 News.
Well, there was a lingering question hanging over the playoff match between the Seahawks and 49ers. Can the 12 recreate the beast quake? Still ahead, how researchers say seismic activity at Lumen on Saturday stacked up to 2011. First, let's check in with Matt.
And solar activity has been strong. It's beautiful. Sun going down over the Coast Range right now, but there is a severe geomagnetic storm on the sun that's coming towards Earth. We've got the clear sky. We'll talk about our chances of seeing the northern lights tonight.
On weather impact alert days, stay informed, prepared, and connected with KGW and KGW Plus. Coverage that alerts you to what's coming and how it will impact you. Watch extended weather coverage on KGW Plus. The KGW Plus TV app, streaming 24/7. Local news from the team you trust. Track how the weather will impact your day. Breaking news live from the scene. All the local news you need. KGW Plus. Download on your TV and watch for free.
We have now issued a weather impact alert.
We could expect conditions in some parts of our area to change drastically pretty soon, right?
And very quickly, yes.
This is significant rainfall coming our way.
You'll definitely want to be extra cautious.
Certainly becoming increasingly hazardous.
We've got the potential for some tree limbs or even trees or power lines to come down.
Of course, when you hear thunder, it's always best to take cover.
On Weather Impact Alert Days, stream extended coverage on KGW+.
And welcome back in your sports news today. The Portland Trail Blazers now hold an even record so far this season after a win on the road against the Sacramento Kings last night. It was the second night of a back-to-back for Portland and their third win in as many games, following wins against the Atlanta Hawks and Los Angeles Lakers. Denny Avdia was back for the Blazers after a few games off, and he didn't waste any time, putting up 20 points in the first half. Rip City took home the win, 117-110. They'll take a few days off before facing Miami Heat back here at home on Thursday at the Moda Center. And from the court to the field, where we are one game away from finding out who will face off in Super Bowl 60 with the NFC Championship game set. After Saturday's dominating win over the 49ers, the Seahawks will host their division rival, the LA Rams, on Sunday. Drew Andre with our sister station in Seattle has a preview of Sunday's NFC Championship.
Well, they've played two close games already this season. This is pretty rare. The Seahawks have to play two divisional rivals in the playoffs to book a trip to the Super Bowl, but maybe there are some advantages to playing a team you're familiar with. The first time these two teams faced each other, it was Week 11 in LA. Despite 4 interceptions thrown by Sam Darnold, Jason Myers just missed this long kick to win the game. The next time they played, Seattle had the amazing 16-point comeback in the fourth quarter. In overtime, Darnold threw a touchdown pass to Jackson Smith and Jigma. Then Seattle won the game on a clutch 2-point conversion. The Rams punched their ticket to the conference championship game with an overtime win yesterday in snowy Chicago. Under a minute to go in the game, the Bears down a touchdown. Here's quarterback Caleb Williams running backwards. He heaves a prayer into the end zone, and it is caught by Cole Kmet. That sends it to overtime, where Williams, this time not the hero, he throws an interception, and the Rams take over on offense. And just a few plays later, setting up a field goal for the win. So it is now Seahawks Rams. Kickoff is set for 3:30 p.m. on Sunday. The Hawks are the early favorites by 2.5 points. In studio, Drew Andre, King 5 News.
Very exciting stuff there. Well, the famous Beastquake got a run for its money thanks to some seismic activity at Saturday's game at Lumen Field. And this happened less than 30 seconds into the game, causing the crowd to go wild. You know what play we're talking about if you watched. Here's the play that got everyone going crazy, with Rashid Shaheed running back the opening kickoff for a 95-yard touchdown just 13 seconds into the game. Scientists analyzing the activity from their lab at UW saying that play was the most seismic activity of the entire game. The Pacific Northwest Seismic Network had preemptively installed 6 seismometers at Lumen Field to monitor for any shaking. But how does this rank compared to the iconic Beastquake back in 2011?
It seems like the first play was the biggest of the day, actually, from the point of view of how strong it was shaking. And just to put it on a scale, it shook the place from the one instrument that we have that's in the same location as the Beastquake in 2011, about the same as the Beastquake. So very similar. Our team is refining the measurement, just making sure we get it right. But I can say it was about the same as the scale of the Beastquake.
All right, and while this was not an earthquake, these rumblings were similar to a 3.2 earthquake. I can believe it. People were really excited.
Oh, yeah. That place gets rocking for sure. And a lot of Seahawk fans here in the Portland area, too. So fun.
Definitely.
Okay, so tonight should be pretty great.
Because we're going to look up.
We should definitely look up. Let's explain why. There's the sun going down over the coast range from our camera. Our Explorer Tualatin Valley sky cam out at the Reserve Golf Course in Washington County. And with the clear sky, we're kind of lucky. Perfect conditions. It will be chilly, of course, but a great night to look for the northern lights, and there's a really good chance we'll be able to see them. Look at the sunset happening out of the coast right now at Lincoln City, 55 degrees. Yes, it will be chilly, so you need to dress for it, but there was a big solar flare on the sun about a day ago, and that's heading towards Earth, and it was a long-lasting solar flare, which is why we're going to get the K-index up to about 8. When it gets over 8, we stand a really good chance of getting the northern lights down to our latitudes, and that's the forecast for it to be up over 8 later on tonight. So you need you need a lot of things to happen to be able to see the northern lights. But number one, you need to get that strong solar flare to excite the molecules in the atmosphere that creates the color. But it also needs to be happening, newsflash, when it's dark on your side of the hemisphere. Otherwise, you just don't see them, right? So we've got the clear sky, except in the Columbia Basin and then down in the Umpqua Valley. And we've got that strong solar flare headed our way. We'll have more for you on this at 5 o'clock. Okay, east winds, they've been strong. 29 miles an hour still in Troutdale. They gusted to 74 at Corbett today. Elsewhere around the state, though, not bad. They're pretty light once you get out of the gorge and out of the metro area. And the West Hills got hit pretty hard, too. There's been frequent gusts up over 30 miles an hour. Temperatures totally dependent on what the wind is doing. Vancouver and Portland windier, so cooler in the afternoon. As you get away from the gorge, not as much wind, so it warms up into the 50s. We had 60s on the coast. Those were the warmest areas of the state today. And look at these highs in Central Oregon. Deep in that fog layer, it's frosting the trees and some of the roads. 28 was the high in Bend, only 26 in Baker City and John Day. Otherwise, it looks totally clear, right? But high pressure still over us. It's beginning to change its shape a little bit, but it's still over us, still controlling the weather. Then the jet stream taps into all that cold Arctic air that it is delivering down to the eastern 2/3 of the country, and that's where all the snow is right now. And in fact, we hardly have any cloud cover coming our way until maybe about Friday. The end of the week, we'll call it partly sunny, but I doubt we get any precipitation until sometime next week, as we basically see some semblance of high pressure over us through the weekend. There's rain coming our way towards about Monday or Tuesday of next week, and hopefully we'll get into some stormier weather. After that, we really need the mountain snow, but look at this. That's the polar vortex, by the way, shifting its location farther south towards the Great Lakes vortex, if you will. But it'll do that. The polar vortex is not a stagnant thing that never moves. It moves around throughout the course of the winter. So high pressure over us again as we go into the end of next week. We'll have to just wait and see if we can tap into some better chances for storms of precipitation and mountain snow in the weeks ahead. There's Mount Hood right now, a totally clear sky over Oregon, 43 degrees, and the wind is still ripping out of the gorge, 17 miles an hour at the airport right now, so it does make it feel colder, but it's keeping the fog away and it's keeping our air quality in pretty good shape. Where it's not windy, that's where we have air stagnation advisories for bad air quality. So morning fog and parts of the coast, and then sunny throughout most of the day, but tonight it's going to be clear, so definitely give a look for the northern lights later on tonight. Windy in East County, so bundle up. There'll be frost in the mornings in the wind-free areas, and that includes really all of the Willamette Valley where it's not windy, and out of the coast as well, with morning lows down in the 20s to about 30, but the highs tomorrow make the 50s, even the mid-50s up in Longview. Look at the 7-day forecast, Stephanie. It's dry right on through the weekend. We see some clouds roll in Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, but that just turns the sky partly sunny as opposed to mostly sunny, so we just have to be patient.
Okay, we will be. Thanks so much, Matt. Well, there is some good news and bad news when it comes to the flu right now. While flu cases remain elevated across the country, the amount of activity has decreased or stayed stable for 2 weeks. But the bad news, deaths linked to the flu are actually trending upward, and health experts are bracing for the potential of a second round of the virus. In today's Health Minute, Mandy Gaither talks to a pediatrician about why children are one of the groups at highest risk.
In the U.S., hospitalizations for flu in children younger than age 18 have the highest peak weekly rate in more than 15 years. And in the latest week of data, there were 15 flu-related pediatric deaths for a total of 32 reported child deaths associated with flu this season. The CDC says 90% of those who died were not fully vaccinated against flu.
Children, especially under the age of 2, they're pretty small. And when they're still small, you get something that's just so inflammatory, like influenza. When it gets into your lungs, it causes a lot of inflammation.
Dr. Frank Esper with Cleveland Clinic Children says the best protection against severe disease is for adults and children 6 months and older to get a flu shot.
By protecting yourself against influenza, you're also protecting everybody in your family.
Washing hands and highly touched surfaces can also help prevent the spread. For young children, especially at preschool, Esper recommends an adult using an alcohol-based rub to remove germs.
Alcohol is actually a better way to clean off their hands than to use soap and water.
If a child is sick, Esper says to keep them home, and you can also consider masking.
We masked up during the first rounds of COVID. We saw flu just drop, because everybody was staying away from each other. Everybody was masking when they were out. and flu couldn't get through that.
For Health Minute, I'm Mandy Gaither.
And coming up, after more than a decade in business, one local bar is raising its last glass. Hear from the owner as they celebrate their last night with the community that built them.
The KGW Plus TV app, streaming 24/7. Local news from the team you trust on your time. Track how the weather will impact your day.
Certainly becoming increasingly hazardous.
Extended, continuous coverage of breaking news live from the scene.
That snowpack is still heavy.
Go deeper with in-depth interviews and exclusive reporting. All the local news you need, live or on demand. KGW Plus. Download on your TV and watch for free. The KGW Plus TV app, streaming 24/7. Local news from the team you trust. Track how the weather will impact your day. Breaking news live from the scene. All the local news you need. KGW Plus. Download on your TV and watch for free. On Weather Impact Alert Days, stay informed, prepared, and connected with KGW and KGW Plus. Coverage that alerts you to what's coming and how it will impact you. Watch extended weather coverage on KGW Plus.
Coming up new at 5 today, educators call it a child care crisis, how they are pushing Washington lawmakers to make changes.
We know we don't have enough childcare available right now, and to talk about ways to improve affordability and make sure that the workers are being fairly compensated.
What they're suggesting to address low pay and political pressures, they say, are making the industry so short-staffed. That's coming up today at 5. And then ahead at 6, giving new life to Portland's Old Town Greyhound Station, where there will be buses parked there once again, but not passengers. And our final story here at 4, patrons at a local bar raised a glass for one last time last night. Interurban on North Mississippi has closed its doors for good. The business opened back in 2011. In a social media post, the owner said they've faced the same issues that have led other businesses to close recently. He told KGW the community has been amazing in showing their support since they announced their closing.
It's so cool to spend time here and have just people coming out of the woodwork and be able to hang out and hear people's memories about the place and what it meant to them and how it changed their life.
Well, there is no immediate plan for the future, but Hart owns the building and says he does have some ideas of what to do next. Well, that's the end of our show here at 4. Thanks so much for joining us. Let's hand it off now to David and Christine for KGW News at 5.